Welcome, welcome. Here we are talking all about menopause yet again. And today I'm really excited to dig into a conversation with Marina Pavlovic Rivas. She is a co-founder and CEO of Ellie Health. Now, we are going to explore some cutting edge science in this episode. So I'm really hoping that we can keep it understandable for the ordinary person on the street, because this is really important information that Marina is going to be sharing with us today. Some opportunities to do real-time hormone tracking. This is groundbreaking technology that Marina is bringing to market, and she's going to empower us to make data-informed decisions for a smoother midlife transition and lasting hormonal harmony. Wouldn't that be nice, Marina?
It would. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, you're very welcome. And the thing that I've come to learn about you is that not only are you, a very clever lady who's come up with this amazing product that took you 5 years, as far as I understand it, to get to this point. So, well done for sticking at it. But you approached this originally because you were having your own hormonal challenges. Am I right?
Exactly. It started out of a personal need. I wanted to have access to this information myself. Of course, I'm biased. My background is in data science, so I love having data to make decisions, but realized that it was lacking when it came to my health, and especially hormonal health. And what was fascinating to me and my co-founder is that when we started having conversations with hundreds of women, we started seeing that the needs I was experiencing and the gaps I was having in my own life, that it was also present in other phases of life that I hadn't experienced yet. So we spoke with hundreds of women going through perimenopause, and we saw so many shared experience around the lack of information and the impact it had on people's life. So it made it very personal, but at the same time, we saw that it was impacting the life of millions of people. So it gave us the motivation, I would imagine, to continue for many, many years to make that technology a reality.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing that so many of us women in particular still are really quite ignorant when it comes to what is going on in our bodies. That's, through no fault of our own. We've got busy lives. And science sometimes feels like too much, too difficult for us to understand. But hormones are so important, not just through the whole stages of our lives. But what we are talking about specifically today is that around that time of menopause, so perimenopause, but it can last for, up to 10 years, this stage of life. It's not just a fortnight and then it's done. It's lasting a long time, and it's impacting on the quality of women's lives, their ability to do the work. And so this is a really important development, I think.
Yeah, and something we saw that was extremely unfortunate, that really broke her heart across those conversations, was that many times it's only after the perimenopausal transition that many women understood that all this time, this is what was happening. And very often going to the doctor's office and getting other diagnoses like depression, or thinking it's because of work, because of something else, when in fact there was a biological reason behind some of the things they were experiencing. So a lot of distress also during that moment that we saw of not understanding what was happening. And a word that came often was thinking I'm going crazy, and thinking it's personal, thinking it's only us, when in fact that experience seems to be shared with many.
Yeah, and that's definitely my own experience of not knowing until after the fact that
Mhm.
my horrific insomnia was driven by these hormonal fluctuations. And we're going to talk about two key hormones that your device is measuring in real time using samples of saliva, which is, readily available anytime, any place, anywhere. So could you guys just kind of give me some ideas around this, the connections between these two hormones, because they are connected, and the kinds of things that we might experience if these hormones are we'll call it malfunctioning. I can't think of a better word right now.
Yeah, so first of all, how the product works is with a simple saliva test. So we don't need to ship it back to a lab. We don't need to fill a tube and get an analysis elsewhere. It all happen um, where you are. So it's a saliva test where you put one extremity on your tongue for a few seconds, where there's kind of a sponge. You pull on it, take a picture with your phone, and receive the results directly on your phone. And those results are for two key hormones, cortisol and progesterone. Cortisol is often known as or referred to as the stress hormone. And it's true that it has a big role for stress. It's also reflective of how we adapt to stress because the same stressors can be received very differently for different people. And the second hormone is progesterone. And when we think of progesterone, we often think of ovulation, of people who are trying to conceive. And it's true, it has a major role for this goal, but it also has a major role throughout a woman's life, where its fluctuation across the menstrual cycle is linked to different moods, different performance, different ways of approaching life. And throughout perimenopause, it fluctuates quite drastically, where overall it declines throughout the years, but not in a necessarily steady way. So someone can see many fluctuation throughout that long phase that you've mentioned, can take up to 10 years. And very often this hormone that we call a reproductive hormone plays a role in overall health. So we see both of those hormones as a key hormone for how you feel, perform, and even age, because proactively managing hormone levels and avoiding dysregulation can also be linked to better health outcomes, not only in the short term, but also for the longer term.
Yeah, and that really is a passion of mine. This idea of the health span
Mhm.
and a healthy and active older age is something that I think most of us aspire to, in actual fact. So, and you're quite right that it isn't just about the symptoms in the moment, but our overall health for the longer term. How menopause affects women's bodies, minds, it's really quite profound.
Mhm.
And it's something that has been neglected over the years. That's changing. We're seeing that, we're noticing that in the media. But still, for me, what we are told is that in that period of perimenopause, it's really not worth measuring the hormones because they know that they are fluctuating, and that getting meaningful information in that period of time, when conventionally it would be a snapshot with a blood test on one day, that might be months or even years apart. And so that information that you can glean from that snapshot is really quite limited. And so, I'm kind of curious to think that maybe this technology of being able to bring non-invasive testing into our homes And you've spoken to the fact, I've heard you speak to the fact that you wanted it to be affordable as well, which is, that speaks to one of my values, which is that this stuff is often we're priced out of the market with this health tech and health information. So I said quite a lot there, actually, Marina. Can you unpick a question from that?
Yeah, so there's different groups and perspective when it comes to hormone monitoring. And one of those perspectives is the one you've mentioned, where people will say, well, hormones fluctuate all the time, so it's useless to measure them because they fluctuate all the time. And then there's another perspective that says, well, because they fluctuate all the time, we should be able to monitor them and have an idea of how they impact our lives. And there's some truth in both. The first perspective, where it's about hormone fluctuates all the time, so it's useless to measure it. It was true to some extent with traditional lab testing, where having access to one snapshot, let's say one data point in the year, can be already insightful to some extent. But it's also similar to taking your heartbeat or your sleep score once a year and making decision for the rest of the year based on that. It will be limited information. So already having access to a snapshot is better than nothing. But now with this technology and the ability to measure frequently over time at a price point that is accessible, it enables for the first time that possibility to have access to hormonal data on a continuous manner, and seeing how that information and how hormone fluctuations are linked to different symptoms that women and people would be experiencing, and have a feedback loop where they can see how different lifestyle intervention even impact positively or negatively hormone balance.
Yeah, I think that's right. And of course, we're talking predominantly about women in this conversation today, but your product is not exclusively geared towards women. I mean, progesterone perhaps, but cortisol is universal in across the sexes, isn't it?
Exactly. And even progesterone, it's a hormone that men have as well.
Oh my goodness, of course, is it?
It's just that on when we look at the broader scale, it does happen that for some men, progesterone imbalances can be linked to different problems that they may have, or challenges, but it's in much smaller proportion than women for whom it's a key hormone throughout their life.
Okay.
And cortisol, however, is as important for men than it is for women. And the levels of cortisol in men and women often would be following similar ranges. And that's true throughout different phases of life. And we have other hormones coming up, like testosterone, that is known mostly as a male hormone, but that also play a very key role for women, including during perimenopause.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you for putting me right on the science there. And so I suppose the progesterone, testosterone, it's kind of in reverse, isn't it, for men and women? That we have less of it than they do, but it is still a key hormone for women. Let's just talk a bit more about cortisol, because we are hearing more and more about the effects of cortisol on the body. How it's a built-in stress barometer, and that there are natural fluctuations across a day that you might expect, and that different levels might cause you to experience symptoms if you've got either too much or too little of this hormone. So can we talk a bit about cortisol? Because I think people are hearing much more and more about this in the media.
Yes, and very often when we speak of cortisol, even in the from a cultural standpoint, we often hear my cortisol is high, or I have to lower my cortisol. So it's often a hormone that is getting a bad reputation where
Mm.
it always has to be decreased. And that's not actually the case, because cortisol is a hormone that, when it functions properly, the optimal pattern is high levels in the morning and low levels in the evening. So it follows what is called a diurnal curve,
Mm.
where there's that rise in the morning that gets us ready for the day. It's what wakes us up in the morning and gives us energy for what's about to come, and slowly decreases throughout the day to reach its lowest in the evening and
Mm.
prepare us for sleep. So that's really the optimal pattern. But for many people, there's about 1 in 3 people that experience cortisol dysregulation. That pattern can take different form. For some people, it will be constantly high cortisol. So yes, high in the morning, but higher than what is optimal, and high in the evening, where it stays high throughout the day. And that comes with a set of symptoms that people can experience. There's also the opposite of levels that stay constantly low.
Ah,
And
okay.
very often in high performers, we think or people who are under chronic stress, that
Mm.
levels will stay high. And that's true for some people. But for others, it's actually the opposite that happens. And they tend to have levels that are too low,
Mm.
like an adaptive response from their body that prevents that peak in the morning from happening. So those are
Mm.
some of the common patterns, but there's also others, like low in the morning, high in the evening, a bit all over throughout the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and depending on those patterns, the interventions that will be suggested would be different.
Mm. Yeah, well, this is the other thing that your technology allows for, is that not just are we getting a raw data, but that we can connect the information that you take from the saliva sample and convert it into not just a raw number, but health guidance, health advice, health interventions. And that's something that you're doing in the app, isn't it?
Exactly. And in the mobile app, we focus on lifestyle intervention.
Mm.
So thankfully, there's already a lot of research that has been done around how different lifestyle intervention can impact hormone balance. So we're leveraging that existing data and existing research in order to make different suggestions in the app around lifestyle interventions that people can do. As of today, we're not making a clinical
Mm.
recommendation, for example, around hormone replacement therapy.
Mm.
That's something that's a big demand from the community, both medical and from users, that
Mm.
will likely come in the future. But
Right.
for the moment, we really focus on lifestyle intervention, because we do believe that, and believe out of the research that has already been done, that it's a powerful way to address hormone imbalances.
Yes, and you know, the what you said about lifestyle medicine is what I preach, and hormone replacement therapy isn't a solution for everything, because if you're doing everything else wrong in your life, no amount of HRT is going to fix that. If we're burning the candle at both ends, if we're drinking too much, if we're eating a diet consistently comprised of processed foods, then all of this is really going to be our undoing. And so I love the fact that your first port of call is lifestyle medicine, because it is really powerful stuff and it really does work. And I'm sure you've been showing that with the people that you've been working with up to now.
Yes, and I'm sure you saw it in your practice as well. So for and it depends also on the in the journey. Some people, for some time, for a couple years, lifestyle intervention will be enough. Will
Mm.
change drastically the different symptoms that they may be experiencing. But for other people, or the same person but at a different phase,
Mm.
they will need that extra
Yeah.
support. And then
Yeah.
there's other consideration. For example, levels that are too low, levels of hormone that are too low sometimes can be correlated with other conditions in the future. Let's say estradiol levels that are below optimal ranges can be linked to osteoporosis later in life. So
Yeah.
there's different ways to build bone density with lifestyle interventions. But then depending on the situation, sometimes having a hormone replacement therapy in conjunction with those other lifestyle intervention can be what's recommended. But for now, that's not what we put forward in the app. However, people can use the app for the hormonal levels, for the lifestyle interventions, and are always free to share that information with their provider that can decide to combine that information with other diagnosis tools to make a complete picture and a protocol that goes beyond lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important because, for us to be empowered in these conversations with our healthcare providers, information is really going to help both of us in that conversation, isn't it? And you're absolutely right that once we've got our lifestyle measures in place, there are still occasions when hormone replacement therapy is indicated, is required, is necessary. And I think what you said about it, these things are also interconnected, and that a reading of cortisol may be indicative of another underlying health condition that you do need to get medical help for. So, it is important. I do bang the drum for lifestyle medicine, but I am wearing an HRT patch, because like you were mentioning, osteoporosis is something that as a physiotherapist, I've been on the sharp end of watching people go through that horrific experience. And it's really not one that I would want in my future. And I know that estrogen is really speaking to the bones, and that's really important for me. So you make a really good point. I think the thing that we really want to get across is this is an opportunity for people to gather information about what's going on in their own bodies. And, many times people come to me and they just say, I just want to know what's going on. And this is a great opportunity to dig down into what's happening in the body. And your app is allowing them to kind of interpret that information as well, because getting a number, it doesn't necessarily mean anything to people. They get x-rays, they can't read them. Same with the MRI scans. And, so this sounds like something that even ordinary people can feel empowered and, make decisions based on this data.
Exactly. And same, we saw a similar pattern than the one you've mentioned, where people were saying, I want to know what's happening. Some of them were mentioning, like we spoke about earlier, I want to know that I'm not crazy. I want to know there's something changing in my body. And for many, it's reassuring to see that what they're experiencing, there's fluctuations that happen biologically that are correlated with that. And when they're able to see those patterns, it becomes empowering to be able to predict when those patterns will likely occur, but also what someone may experience when those fluctuations happen, and what they can do about it to try to reduce the intensity, the frequency of what they're trying to avoid.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? So, say we're talking about progesterone in the first instance. I've already mentioned that progesterone is one of the first hormones to start going AWOL when we are in perimenopause, and for me, and I know that hormone is linked to sleep, and for me, it was just a terrible experience of insomnia, waking 7 times a night. And it went on for years because when I went to my doctor, um, they sort of said, oh, well, you can have HRT, but nobody really explained what that was going to do. And I'm from that generation of women who were told that HRT gives you breast cancer. So, the alarm bells were ringing at that point. And the other option was antidepressants, which that was not for me. So, but if somebody had explained that, your progesterone's doing this, or even a bit of this, and having even just some progesterone at that stage might have meant that I was getting a better night's sleep. I was already eating well, moving, regularly, doing all the things that I thought were good, apart from stress. I was a bit stressed, I have to say. But do you know what I mean? This the idea that progesterone's going down in perimenopause. Our hormones are fluctuating. We do absolutely think, a lot of us, that we're going mad, but we do it quietly, not mentioning it to anybody else.
Yeah.
And it would be so nice if this didn't have to keep happening to women.
Exactly. And sometimes just being able to see the pattern and being able to identify that something is happening, then is a first step in taking action. And there's some situations like the one you've mentioned where lifestyle changes are already maxed out, in the sense that every box is being already addressed, and where perhaps hormone replacement therapy is the next step. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of myths around hormone replacement therapy that have been debunked since a long time, but there's persistent fear around it, when many people would benefit from taking it earlier than later. So there's different dynamic, but one is the one you mentioned around stress. And very often there's a correlation between cortisol dysregulation and progesterone imbalances. And that's where sometimes, and that's one of the reasons why we started by launching cortisol ahead of any other hormones, because it has that deep impact across all bodily system, including having an impact on progesterone. So very often we see a dynamic where when people address cortisol imbalances, a lot of the symptoms they experience around progesterone imbalances and perimenopause are less intense, less frequent. So it's also a great way to start addressing the stress portion and the cortisol portion.
Yeah, this is, the fact that our bodies are these complex systems where things are interdependent is where, the normal average human being starts to get a bit challenged, cognitively. But I would like it if you could just talk me through some scenarios with cortisol, bearing in mind what you just said about the impact on progesterone, because often, women, we're being told that interventions like cognitive behavioral therapy can help menopause symptoms. And people start to think, oh, that's I must be going mad now because they're offering me this cognitive behavioral therapy. But actually, that is a stress management tool. And it has been shown to be beneficial for perimenopause symptom management. And so clearly that is speaking to this cortisol piece of the puzzle. So I would like to unpick this a bit more. You mentioned about the diurnal curve. So it's got a peak potentially in normal circumstances, a peak in the morning, going lower in the evening, and then it starts to peak. Is that to wake us up? Is it designed to wake us up?
Exactly, it is.
So it's waking us up, and sometimes it wakes us up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Marina.
It
That
does.
can't be right.
It does, and that's something some of our users, when they woke up in the middle of the night, tested their cortisol and saw there was a peak, and sometimes test again in the morning when they would have liked to wake up and see that there is no peak occurring at that time. So it's one of the dynamic that can occur sometime, and that the peak happens in the night, wakes us up when we don't want to, but
Yeah.
when we want to wake up, that we feel tired and exhausted. So there's different dynamic that can occur there. And you've mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy as a tool that can be used, and that's true. And for stress, one of the unfortunate thing is that there's many things that can cause stress, but the positive thing is that there's many things that can also reduce stress and control stress. There's a big toolbox that people can use depending on their cortisol pattern, depending on their preferences as well, and how they respond to those different actions. It can be as simple. There's one study showing that even 20 minutes in nature can have a big impact on reducing cortisol levels. So it goes from anything from exposure to nature, light exposure, having a morning and nighttime routine that is shifted a bit to support our personal circumstances, sports. The intensity and timing of sports also plays a different role there. So the toolbox is wide, and that's a positive news. But for many people, it's also complicated to navigate because there's all of those different options, and it becomes unclear what's actually moving the needle for me specifically. And that's where being able to have that feedback loop and test out different things and see which ones actually have an impact on bringing cortisol levels to an optimal pattern, or the closest to it that it can.
Yeah, then it can be. And I guess this could be different for different people. You probably find that. But I think, what you're talking about, the data-driven decision making is what's really important. And so when we're doing this saliva test for cortisol, we'll say, can you explain what that would look like?
In terms of protocol?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yeah, so for cortisol, given the diurnal curve that we spoke about, we recommend to do the first test within 30 minutes of waking up. The reason behind it is what we call the cortisol awakening response, where before getting up, it starts to rise. It peaks on average, 30 minutes after waking up, and then continues to decline. So being able to see within those first 30 minutes of waking up, what's your cortisol level, gives you a good idea if your morning levels are optimal or not, and if that peak occurs at the moment where it's planned. And for the second test, we recommend, doing 2 tests at least in the day to have that morning, evening measurement. We recommend to do it anytime after 6 p.m., keeping in mind that different things like high intensity exercise may have an impact on cortisol. So we do recommend to take it as late as possible in the day to be reflective of the moment where it should be at its lowest. So there's those at least 2 data points that we recommend in order to be able to see that diurnal curve.
And over the space of a month, if you were trying to sort of look at trends and say what's happening over time as we apply some lifestyle interventions, say, for instance?
Yeah, so throughout the month, we recommend to test at least 2 days. And that's a minimum to be able to have your baseline, then try different lifestyle intervention and see if it has an impact on cortisol or not. So that's really a minimum that we recommend throughout the month to see that evolution. But then there's some people that decide to test much more frequently on a weekly basis, sometimes even on a daily basis for people that have a lot of changes happening in their life, a lot of travel, a lot of different stressors that vary a lot throughout the month. For those people, they often prefer having more data points.
Yeah, and I mean, in the first instance, that might be a good thing, just to gather as much information as we can, depending on different things that we experience across a week, across a month,
Mhm.
because because not every day is the same, and people have do different things on different days, and you kind of want to understand. It's like wearing the wearables. The information is hourly. In the moment, it's live information, and so people, in the first instance, I can see how that might be useful. And if you are an athlete, high
Mhm.
performing individual, then yes, I'm sure more is better. But the fact that this is I think you've talked about it being how many pounds or dollars, I've forgotten, for each test.
It starts at $8 per test.
Yeah, and I mean that's really low for this kind of science to be coming into your home, isn't it?
Yes, well, typical traditional hormone tests often start at about $100,
Mm,
and sometimes can go up to $500, $700.
mm,
And beyond price, one of the other limitation is the time that it takes before
mm,
receiving your result, where you have to either order a sample collection kit at home, wait to receive it, ship it back to the lab, wait for the result, or go physically somewhere to take a test,
mm,
which can be in blood and urine and saliva, and then wait a couple days or sometimes even a couple weeks, depending
mm.
on where you are in the world. In Canada, it can be a couple months sometimes
Oh,
to get the information. So it becomes way too long to
mm,
take action uh,
mm.
and create that tight feedback loop that many people are missing.
Yeah, and more people are craving, and quite rightly. We've got to take our health into our own hands. Our healthcare system is overburdened, and and so the more that we can do to look after ourselves, the better. And I think you've really nicely explained how cortisol should look, and some of the ways in which it goes wrong. The fact that lifestyle interventions can be different and vary from person to person. And I think that's important because, the evidence is that we're more likely to do things that we enjoy rather than somebody saying, oh, you must do this, that, or the other. I mean, I'm a yoga teacher and I've just come back from a trip to India, and that really speaks to my heart. It was the thing that I started doing actually to combat the perimenopause symptoms. Prior to that, I'd always thought that lying down on a mat was a complete waste of time. But anyway, I've come around to that idea, and I'm now a complete convert. And that definitely is something that I've experienced symptom relief from doing breath work, meditation, mindful movement practices like yoga, like Pilates. I do all of those things, and I teach all of those things. And it's amazing stuff. And you've also talked to the fact that cortisol and progesterone have this relationship with one another. These are steroid hormones, which the building blocks for the steroid hormones are limited in the body. So if we're making too much of one thing, then the stealing from Peter to pay Paul, that's the saying in the UK.
Yeah, so and to your point of doing what we enjoy, that it drives us to do it more. Sometimes also we've seen often that when people see the data behind something being effective, and that data can be existing research, but
Mm,
then when they can see also how it applies to them, sometimes there's people who finds new passions, like in your
mm,
case, yoga. I've seen it even around me. My mom, who's 71 years old, hates eat, but then saw the clear research around saunas, and has some predisposition around heart health, and learned to enjoy doing sauna. It was a gradual process. But when we have the information, it
mm,
can also guide us into testing out things that we never thought we would be implementing in our daily lives, and who knows, maybe starting to enjoy it, which is something that occurs very often when we know that we're doing something good for us.
Yeah, I know this is true. And I encourage people to try new things because, it's like, how do you know you don't like broccoli if you've never tried it? Let's embrace the broccoli and, you may just find a whole new passion. You hear about it time and time again, people taking up running, people, well, like you say, with the sauna, the benefits. And once you start to feel better, then that in and of itself is a driver. The data is the proof of the pudding. You really know this stuff's working, but when you start to feel better, that's really when then you embrace the nettle and you keep on with these things. So if you could share just one message with women who are feeling overwhelmed or exhausted by midlife changes, what would it be, Marina?
It would be that it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm.
We've seen again and again in those hundreds, if not thousands, of calls that we had with women. Some of them were asking us, "Am I normal? I know you're." They were telling us, "I know you're speaking with many other
Mm,
women. Am I the only one feeling that way?" And that's
mm,
something that we saw often. That perception of being isolated,
mm.
and of experiencing something that is from unknown sources. So I would say that first, you're not alone, and second, there's many tools that can be at your disposition, and to not to go beyond the initial barriers, because very often, unfortunately, women go to their health practitioners that, depending on where you live, may not be informed around perimenopause. And they say, well, my doctor told me that it's not that I'm too young, that whatever is the message there that they receive. And sometimes they feel left alone in that situation. So to go
Yeah.
beyond that initial hurdle, and get the information you deserve.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And you are currently in Canada. You told me this,
Yes.
and you mentioned your price in dollars. And I just wondered, is there any chance that we might be seeing this technology here in the United Kingdom?
Yes, it's on the roadmap for, we plan next year to make it available in other regions, including the United Kingdom.
Oh, good. Well, that's really good news. So, can you please tell everybody where we can find you?
At ellie.health. So that's our website, simply ellie.health. And that's where people can learn more about the product, but also get additional information, including on our blog, around the impact of hormones on different things, including perimenopause.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. So, ELI dot health. Is that
Exactly.
what you said? Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's perfect. Well, unless you've got anything else that you wanted to share with us, I just really would love to thank you so much for coming along and giving up your time today. This is really important information for women to be empowered and move towards older age with, vigor, vim and vigor, and, really thrive through midlife and beyond. So thank you so much for coming along today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation and for putting that information in the hands of people through your work.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I hope to do. So we'll say goodbye from Moving Through Menopause. Marina and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this episode with someone that you care about. And let's get the word out that women can thrive through midlife and beyond and live an active and fulfilled life. The world is your oyster. Don't you agree, Marina?
I do.
All right. Well, thank you. And so bye for now. We'll say
Bye.
goodbye.